also have a consulting firm, which is what Race Positive is all about. And through that, I've been creating something called Race Talks with Dr. Nika. As a psychologist, I fundamentally believe in the power of talking. I believe the healing comes when we talk. And so often conversations around race, particularly here in the US, devolve very quickly into name calling, into very unhealthy dynamics, and very little progress is made. And so through Race Positive, what I've been doing for about a year plus has been creating these quarterly events where I invite the public in, and we have a hugely diverse audience always, which makes me really, really happy. But we literally sit in a circle and we talk, and there's always a topic that I will sort of use for each conversation, each talk. So what we've had in the past, we've talked about the difference between impact and intent when it comes to discussing race-based issues. We've talked about Colin Kaepernick. I'm not sure how much you are aware, but he's a renowned NFL football player here in the US who took to kneeling at the national anthem in protest to the police brutality and the killings of unarmed Black men around the country. But unfortunately, that was met with a lot of hostility and a lot of pushback, and it just created a whole firestorm here. So we talked about whether he was a patriot or if he was a traitor based on his activity, and just getting diverse conversation and thoughts around it. We've talked a lot about things like cultural appropriation. What is it? So all those kinds of things are topics that we've had robust, healthy discussions on. And for me, just even in the name of the company, Race Positive, I often it's there are multiple layers to that name. Race Positive isn't oftentimes race is seen as a negative thing, and whether it's trying to downplay it by saying I don't see race, I'm colorblind, or seeing it as problematic, what you're this color, therefore you don't belong, you don't add value. I really wanted to encourage people to see racial identity as a positive thing and not as a detraction, not as a negative thing to be hidden away or to be denounced. I also wanted to say that the conversations, again, around race are often negative, and they don't have to be. And positive is not code for passive, which is what I think sometimes people fear when you say positive. And these talks, positive just means I see you as a human being who's valuable and therefore is deserving of my respect. And I can disagree with you, but I can also see your humanity even in that disagreement. And so that's really the frame that we hold when we're having these conversations. So all that to say, and again, I don't know how much you're seeing in the news, but here in the US, I believe we're now the leading country in terms of COVID diagnoses, but also deaths. We've surpassed 100,000 just a few days ago, and we continue to soar, unfortunately. And what we've been seeing in terms of inequality is that the number of deaths among the Black and Brown communities here in the US is more than double that of the white population. And on the surface, one may think, well, it's because people within the Black and Brown communities have more susceptible preconditions that may predispose them to dying from COVID, like diabetes and hypertension, heart disease, asthma, and other factors. But to stop there, I think would not be wise, because it misses a whole lot of truth. And the systemic inequalities that have long existed that allow for those conditions to be created, to be fostered, to be maintained as they are, is really what has led to the disparity in the deaths. Not someone being Black or brown isn't the cause of them dying more likely from COVID than someone who's white. It's the systemic factors that have contributed to what life as a Black or brown person in this country looks like that makes them more susceptible. So what do I mean by that? Well, when we think about the social determinants of health, access to really quality healthcare is lower among Black and brown populations. Why? Well, perhaps having good quality doctors in the area is not always available to people. Having proper health care coverage, you may have health insurance, but it doesn't mean that you're always able to access it, because if you have very high deductibles, then you have to meet those deductibles yearly before you're able to have any or all of your coverage covered by the insurance company. So if you are below the poverty line, or you make a very low amount of money, and you have a yearly deductible of $2,000, $3,000, then that means you have to pay in $2,000, $3,000 before the insurance company would even give a dime to help cover your medical needs. And so as you can see, that becomes cost prohibitive for a lot of people to get quality care. So they'll go without. Access to quality foods. Again, I really appreciated Charlene talking about the greenhouses and having fresh foods available within one's neighborhood. We have a lot of things that we call food deserts here in the US, where there are many spaces available where people live, but whether it's getting a grocery store, whether it's having able to access fresh foods, not so much. It's not always available. And you find that in the poorer areas or largely Black and Brown communities, you often don't see as much diversity or availability of healthy grocery stores or multiple grocery stores or farmers markets or anything like that. So the cost of the produce, the cost of the healthy foods, the vegetables, those plant-based produce, they're high. And again, if you are low income, that's cost prohibitive. So you're not able to access that because of your income. And because there's so few of it, you may have to travel further to go seek out getting access to those foods. So then the distance in itself becomes a prohibitor to accessing foods. And so there are so many factors that make it hard for people to have quality foods, which then leads to poor diet. Of course, poor diet then makes them more susceptible to these preconditions for COVID, like diabetes and heart disease, and et cetera. We see other things like immigration status is a huge. I believe with the number is 11 million people. There are 11 million people who are undocumented in the United States, and that in itself is a huge political firestorm. But if someone is undocumented, then they are even less able to access a lot of the social safety nets that many people right now are using to help them survive COVID. What I mean by that is they do recently pass what they call the CARES Act, and that's for people who have lost their jobs due to COVID. They can file for unemployment, and the government will give them a check for $600 or so, or give them a stimulus check for $1,200 total, just to help offset costs and expenses that they've incurred during this time. Well, if you're a person who's undocumented, you're not getting any of that money. You're not allowed to apply for any of those fundings, and therefore you go without. And when you are undocumented, you also don't often have access to jobs that would give you health care, so you have none. When you get sick, your only sort of safety net is to go to the emergency rooms, and our emergency rooms have been overrun due to COVID. And so there's even less of a likelihood that people will get help uh, if they're having a non-COVID related issue. So that becomes a system of inequality that comes out. But not having access to jobs that pay for health insurance is one factor that undocumented immigrants have to deal with. They often have jobs that make them frontline workers. We've been billing people here, we call them essential workers. They're often the food delivery people, they're the nannies, they are the ones who work as the store clerks, they're the ones who come in and clean up the grocery stores and wipe everything down to make sure that patrons can come in the next day to a COVID friendly, COVID healthy space. But a lot of those jobs, it not only puts them on the front line, so they're more susceptible to the disease, but then they're also dispensable. So they're the first to be fired, the first to be let go. So you see there's this sort of very negative feedback loop where people are already on the edges of society without the appropriate supports. And then when we have something like COVID, they get pushed over all the more. And what I've been saying is that while, and I think Helnik, you alluded to this earlier, while we can all agree that COVID has just been a force to be reckoned with and it's done a lot of damage and a lot of hurt to a lot of people across the world, I do feel what it has also done is has torn the veil back and exposed a lot of the inequities that have long existed in our societies in our respective countries. And it's, I think, put an exclamation point next to those, and we've been forced to look at them as they actually are. And we have been forced to ask ourselves, do we want to continue along this path or do we want to stop and make a change? And so when it comes to thinking about, well, what changes can be made, one of the things that I do believe, again, going back to the race talks, is having conversations. And I don't just mean conversations for the sake of talking, but I think when we bring people, Ghada, I hope I'm saying her name correctly, when she was mentioning all the key stakeholders have to be in the conversation. I firmly agree with her. Racism and inequity that comes from it, which we see it manifests in income inequality, we see it in gender inequality. It all kind of bleeds out with this sort of systemic um, inequality that's built into how we run our government, how we run our society. We all see it coming out through this time that we're in a very punctuated way. And so having a talk where we're able to bring all the stakeholders into the conversation and help through that build insight, build empathy, build collaboration. And through that collaboration, I think we have room for a lasting systemic change. So one of the things I'm doing is I'm actually next Saturday, I'm going to be having a virtual race talk. And again, I'm not sure how much you're seeing in the news, but we've had a string in the past week of just some really heart-wrenching stuff. A black man who was unarmed, was handcuffed, was basically murdered by the police officer arresting him, who placed his knee over the man's neck, and despite protestations from the man and from so many other people, refused to move his knee, and he killed him. And so there's been a lot of unrest, a lot of protests and rioting that's been happening in the past 48 hours here. And a lot of people are just in distress over this crime that's happened and the lack of accountability that's come as a result of it. And not just for this crime, but this series of crimes that have happened over the past years and decades that have gone without accountability. And so having this talk next week for people of color where they can come and they can speak and just have a safe space to process openly about the hurt that they're feeling and how they can take care of themselves. And with my mental health training, be able to give them hopefully some tools or some advice on how they can better care for themselves, and in so doing, be better able to go out and support their communities and support each other, is one of the ways that I think that we can bring about change. Another way that we can be mindful about it. We recently had, I forget his position, but he is part of the Trump administration. His name is Alex Azar, and he was speaking about the vaccine and whether or not, once the vaccine has been identified, will it be available for free to everyone? How will we ensure that everyone gets it? And he couldn't promise that it would be something that would be affordable or accessible to everyone. And I just thought that was very problematic, because I think what COVID has shown is that if you even if you don't care about me, if I'm not safe and healthy, you still can't leave your house, right? So you have to care about what happens to even the least of us, even if you don't see value in me. And so to have any sort of vaccine that does not have access to the homeless person on the street, to the undocumented immigrant um, who's working in your grocery store or babysitting your kids, to not have access to the person who lives in a mansion, like it does not make sense. We have to make it equitable. We have to make it appropriate. And so just putting a lot of community pressure and advocacy and vocalizing the need to have equitable access to these life-saving measures like a vaccine, like testing, for example, without the pressure of having to pay some high cost or needing to have a particular health insurance coverage or be in a particular location, really helps to, I think, bring about a little bit more equity and a little bit more, again, lasting systemic change that needs to come. I can keep talking, but I don't know if people have questions or want to say other things, but I'll pause here.
I think that's such a great cover of that SDG, Dr. Anika, and I want to thank you for jumping on and representing a huge community of people around the world that are affected because of, like you were saying, the structural inequality that's reflected through structures that are not in place. The whole systemic structure really is now revealing all the things, all the gaps, all the leaks that really are there. And we have been seeing quite a lot about very specific racial um, tension, and also the way race has played into the COVID dynamic and how many specific communities are more affected. The police brutality you mentioned, I think I did come across it as well, but it's also a theme that keeps repeating every now and again. So I think when there's enough stress on the planet, we also see these kind of leaks of violence in really strange ways. And I want to thank you for the work you're doing and really for representing that. I think we need to move quite swiftly on to the SDG that we have left. We've lost Iris. She had to go and take care of her kids. We're running late. So that's, I guess, the reason why she was here until 5. So for the two that have remained, that have stuck with us, thank you for still being here, Dr. Satnam and Magda. I would love you to both share with us your passion about peace. This is the SDG for peace, justice, and strong institutions. And we actually have it on as tomorrow's SDG. But if you would both introduce it as well today, and just tell us a bit about your work. And then if you like and you can, you come back tomorrow and tell us more. So who would like to go? Maybe I can hold Dr. Satnam for tomorrow, and Magda, you can share with us today. Okay, so just need
Yes,
to,
please.
and I'll just say something about Magda being an award-winning activist in Cyprus for the establishing uh, conversation and continuing work that needs to be done to establish peace conversations as something that women are also party to. There's been a lot of research done that proves that women involved in peace dialogue actually supports the contracts that are signed to last longer and to be more effective. But however, the research stands, there are still not enough women actually involved in these official processes. We have that conflict in Cyprus between the Turkish Republic and the Greek Cypriot community, and we know that Magda is now going to speak on behalf of that work, but also she's a South African and has a very strong passion for injustice. Thank you for joining us, Magda.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here with you all. I'm actually going to start with the fact that peace building is not separate. Everything we've been talking about since I've joined is peace building, whether it's brutality in the streets, whether it's sustainable gardening to eat fresh food. Everything we do every day is part of peace building. And I think we need to unpack peace so that we don't separate it. We are all doing something toward peace building because peace building is not a destination, it's a journey, it's an everyday journey. Um, as Felenik said, I've always been an activist. I was born in the dark days of apartheid South Africa, and I was activist as a very young child against the injustices then. I was fortunate to have parents that just worried about my safety. They wanted me to be safe. They knew they couldn't control my passion. And in fact, I don't think they wanted to. I think they were quite proud of the fact that I was so sure and stood where I put my money where my mouth was. Um, I came to Cyprus and I joined the conversation about peace building and especially women's participation, because I think if you don't have inclusive conversations, if you don't include everyone, that the decisions that are being made influence, you won't have success. People need to be invested in the decisions that are made. They need to know they've been heard, whether they join the conversation or not. They need to know they can join the conversation. They need to be able to contribute to the conversation. And it's something that I fell into inadvertently. And strange enough, I joined the women's conversation because I found it easier to join than the ethnic conversation on Cyprus about what was wrong and what was right about a peace settlement. All I knew when I got here is that everyone that was involved in the clashes of 63 and 74 needed to be at the table. We, as Cyprus, despite the fact that we're a first world country, despite the fact that we belong to the EU, despite the fact that we actually have one of the highest percentages of people with tertiary education, and especially women, women are not part of the conversation. They're not part of decision making. We have a ministerial council with one woman. She's great, but she's only one. And she was put in when there was a reshuffling about 6 months into the formation of the ministerial council after the present president was voted in. So women are not an essential part of the conversation. And even though there's a lot of awesome, educated, informed, um, creative women in this island, they're not in the part of the conversation. And the sad part of it is that they actually consider the peace building something separate. They've left it to the men. Okay, and I find it it bothers me because we all know that when men talk about peace and peace building, they talk about borders, armies, sharing land. They don't talk about personal security. They don't talk about my body being safe or my sexual and reproductive rights. They don't talk about sharing of resources because we all need to eat. They want to share resources as a way of power. They don't want to share resources so that all people have access. So there's a very different perception or a different way of approaching peace building when men go to a peace negotiation. When I go to a peace negotiation, I'm going to consider my body, I'm going to consider my kids, I'm going to consider my community, I'm going to consider my job. I want my everyday life to not be affected and those around me. Men tend to think in a very one dimensional, elitist way because they think of the state. So to me, it's very important to bring this conversation, make it more public. It's very important to bring out women that are doing awesome work at grassroots level. And I've heard a lot of you speaking here. So to me, unless we get women into the process and into decision making and promote them. And as we've all said on here, we all digital. So we need to promote each other. We need to promote ourselves. There's nothing wrong with saying, I did something really great today and saying it public. The thing that I found liberated me and almost I fell onto it inadvertently, and it actually changed my life completely. Was I was very involved in a local peace conversation and women peace conversation, and then I was offered the opportunity of doing an online community radio program on women. Okay, it started off me doing general conversations about women, and then suddenly I realized I want to talk about women peace builders. I want to talk to women peace builders, and I started talking locally, and then I realized the conversation. We don't live okay. We live in an island, but everyone is different. Everything I can learn from each other. We can learn from each other. We connected to each other. So I started speaking to women beyond my borders. And I have to tell you that this month, I've actually been on the air for 6 years. Once a week, I've had a program with a woman peace builder. I've done it for free. I've done it because it's a passion, but it's created for me a network, but it's also created for me, for the women that I speak to, it's actually made us realize how connected we are and how connected we are in terms of resources we can share. People's backs we can have, because if I go somewhere, I know someone's got my back, even if it's in terms of supporting what I believe in. So unless we step out of our little, the fact that I've stepped out of my little space of Cyprus, and even my space of Cyprus and South Africa, the fact I've stepped into a bigger space, and all together we have made our voices louder. We have made our voice, we have fine-tuned what we actually want or what we can actually contribute. Uh, Beyond my kaleidoscope, and I thought it was quite an ingenious name, it's Kaleidoscope. Uh, Recently, there's also been since 2017, regional networks have developed globally in terms of women mediators, peace builders. There's the women mediators across the Commonwealth, the Mediterranean women mediators, FemWise that does Africa, um, the global mediators that brings them all together, the Women's Alliance of Security Leadership. And what this has all done is that it's actually brought women together. And as I said in the beginning, unpacked what peace building is, because peace building is not just at the table. Peace building is bringing all these pieces together of sustainable access to education, sustainable living, climate change, healthcare, decision making at policy level. It's bringing together all the pieces, because peace building is not at the table. It's also the woman in one of the tribes in Nigeria that's sitting together with a whole group of people trying to sort out intertribal problem. So to me, this is, we've got to, speaking to each other like we are now is making us also connect to other people, other departments, but it also needs to remind us that unless we put ourselves out there, unless we promote ourselves and each other, and I do put myself first, because no one, if I don't believe in what I'm doing and I don't put myself out there, why do I believe someone else is going to believe in me? We need to step out of this gender stereotype of being humble and it's bad to show off. Take pride in what you do. You're all doing awesome work. We're all doing awesome work. And the stronger our voices, the more possibility you have of speaking out against injustice. And unfortunately, the SDG 16 is not doing particularly well because domestic violence is on the increase. Uh, Trafficking is on the increase, and we're not sure if it's on the increase because of numbers or because of social media actually exposing more things. So the more visibility we give to the things we are doing, the more chance we have of raising awareness that they're wrong or putting pressure on policymakers to change legislation. And so I think the more I step out of my comfort zone of Cyprus, and I stepped into the Mediterranean Women Mediators Network or the Cyprus Women's Lobby that I belong to, that's part of the European Women's Lobby, I get reinforced because I find out more information. I also find people that can support things that I don't know. So to me, the SDG 16 is very important because peace covers everything we do. It's everything we do. Every action we do every day in our daily lives is part of peace building. But we need to be aware, firstly, of this, our strengths, and secondly, who can help us. Um, I was very fortunate in the last 6 months. I've been on the air for 6 years doing a weekly program on Women Peaceful, but I was also lucky last month to receive funding for the first time in 6 years. I received funding to do podcasts for specific women peace builders. And the whole idea is to bring to the attention of the policymakers women that actually have the knowledge that can contribute to what is happening. We need to change the conversation. We need to put women at the table to realize that when you're talking about building peace, if I want peace to last, and I think it'll make sense, if I want the peace to last, I need to have an inclusive conversation. I need to know what's happening on the ground in one of the rural towns. I need to know um, what's happening with the refugees. I need to know how the legislation is looking. I need to have a much more holistic picture of what needs to be fixed. No, what is wrong, so that I know what needs to be fixed. So to me, it's the SDG 16, even though I haven't worked on it directly, it's something I've been working on all my whole life. That the injustice, we need to fix the injustices. And to fix the injustices, we need to become aware of them. We also need to, the louder, the more people that are talking about it, the louder the voice. I'm not a believer in that if there isn't a crowd, it doesn't work, because one person does make a difference. And we've seen a few of them recently. Malala and Greta are two to name a few, and that's only within the last 2 years. So we really need to be aware of the fact that peace is everything we do, and we need to be inclusive. And women do bring a different perspective. Women do bring a different perspective. It's not, I'm not saying all women, and it doesn't mean men can't bring in a gender perspective. But essentially, a woman do think, I think there was something that came up a few years ago that says when you educate a man, you educate one person. When you educate a woman, you educate a community. Women tend to think more holistically, more community based. And this is what is lacking. We need to bring it to policy making. We need to bring it to peace processes. We need to bring it to legislation. We need to bring it to legislation so that the things that go wrong, people are made accountable, whether it's discrimination against women or people of color. I mean, when I see this issue of what's happening in the States recently, which it's not recent, it's the fact people, it's merely the fact that people are talking about it now, or people are taking photographs now. But we need to bring out these conversations more publicly because people need to have a louder voice. They need to know they're not alone. And I think that's a big thing to know, that domestic violence, I need to know that it's not only me that's being abused. There's someone that can help me. There's someone that's suffering the same as me. So I really find that the fact that I've stepped out of my comfort zone of Cyprus and stepped into a bigger um, global network has connected me to people that can help me, that I've learned from, and that can learn from me. Because we all have something to learn and we all have something to teach each other. But the more people you speak to, firstly, you fine tune what you believe in. And secondly, you also know who can help you if you need help.
You speak like you teach in every word, Magda Zenon, and you are one of my partners in love, not in crime, because I don't think. Thank you so much for this very fierce, very powerful, very directional introduction to peace and justice. And you share with us something very powerful. People need to be heard in the peace building around the
Mm,
world, because peace is also not separate to any of the SDGs. And I think that's a very powerful pivot there. If we can perceive how peace sits in every single SDG, we can also start to do that with many of the others. And this is what we mean by the interconnectedness and the integration of all the SDGs. And of course, the domino effect, how you work
mm,
on one, you work into others. So the inclusion of women in peacemaking is one of the most significant reasons why I've chosen to put my professional expertise in this direction, because I think it is absolutely, uh, let's say, regressive for our society on the planet to not have women making decisions, because when women do, they affect policy on the level of health and really education. Because we all know in Africa they say that also the woman is the bringer of culture, and in ancient traditional ways women would be the ones that would educate the children at home through all the
mm,
skills and activities, and then the whole community of women that would take care of children. And that has happened in many different cultures around the world. In yogic traditions, Eastern philosophy, they talk so much about the toxicity of a woman affecting 2 times more layers of society than the toxicity of a man. And so when a woman is healthy, she's affecting 16 more layers of the community with that health and radiance that she has, because she's 16 times more um, radiating out in the way that she nurtures and takes care of. And we've seen that in so many women's movements. We've seen how there is really a mobilization or an activation of women interested to actually lobby for change. And I commend all of them and I celebrate them and I elevate them as much as I can. I would love all your help to keep doing that. I also want to honor each one of you for the work that you're doing, and thank you especially, Magda, for highlighting how important it is for us to step even higher and even further out, because we are the ones that are already seeing the need for change and we are working on those areas. And we need to be more, I think, sometimes inviting of other women come closer and to even give them a little push sometimes. So I'm calling all of you to call sisters, friends, cousins, supporters, women that you see have a kind of leadership quality or who could bring some new vision, to come forward a little bit and to give them the kind of sisterhood and support that they need. There are huge collectives of women now ready to work together. And this is the interconnectedness that we've been creating. We called it the community thinking that you point out as well, Martha, that is so common for women and so much part of our relational, what Viola calls relational feminine capital. I want to put it in that way, yeah. And I'm starting to talk about this as the feminine quotient and actually FQ. Like, I think the femininity, the yin energy that we need in the world right now, introduced as the emotional intelligence that's coming through COVID, sometimes overshadowed by the fear and anxiety, but really there's a strong thrust of realizing that people matter, we put people first. But again, the elephant in the room, there are so many voices and so many egos out there that
mm,
are unable at the moment to really go beyond their own need for survival and their own sense of self-preservation. So we have to also find a way to be nurturing and compassionate about that and still do the work and insist that the work be done correctly, because as you say, it's important to be holding accountability. And I'm very happy to be part of this generation, because I think since I was a child, I've been seeing so many secrets, so many shadows, and now as I'm an adult, they are starting to be revealed. The light is on the abusers, it's on the injustice. There is a lot of talk now in our societies about inequalities, about the injustices, even though we're not quite moving to the point of action into them and solving them. We are certainly seeing a readiness to get real about things. And I think this is a very important momentum to be building on. So all the young women here listening, representing all the other groups, you know that there have been many seeds planted, and many before us, and many before us. We carry a long legacy of incredible women throughout history that have done incredible things. And we need,
Can I interrupt you for a second?
I'm on a flow, but yes, go.
I think it's really important for the young woman to take the baton in terms of peace building and the package of peace building, because it's not a separate sector. Everything they do is peace building, but we need the young energy as well. It cannot be on us older women. And I'm saying that to myself with a lot of love. The young women have actually got to come on board,
They are,
because the,
Martha. They are looking for internships and mentors, and we want you to be one of them. Are you going to help?
I'll help. I'm there.
Wonderful. Thursday, in the Women of Truth group. In fact, the post was said as the 21st of May, but I think it's before that even. On Thursdays, we are getting younger women to come and comment on this post if they want mentorship or internships. And what we see is, because of COVID, there is no access to internships or easy access. If you know anyone that has or needs help, you can solve it. But more so than that, mentoring young women to start choosing their direction, whatever it is, to include policy, decision making, peace, and how they incorporate that in a new version, because I do think it is going to be reshaped in where we stand now. Peace does not mean the same thing now to what it meant as it meant 20 years ago. It's a totally different conversation. And I think yeah, like you say, fresh blood, and for them to think about how they want to take up the cause for justice, you know. So, Kiara, you are representing, Justina, you are representing, and we're going to have one more comment from Ghada, but I want us to all leave in 5 minutes. So, just know that I'm calling you all back tomorrow, and we will have more discussion about peace and justice, because Magda's 3 points, I'm still recapping, are very powerful. Women must now become involved in decision making globally. Totally believe in that. And we need to be more visible. This is totally what Women of Truth is about. Many women mediators are gathering to work together and unpack peace, and are bringing all the pieces together. And I think those groups you mentioned, I want you to know, Magda, I've been trying to say this since we spoke, but I didn't have the time to send you a message. So I said, I'm going to say it today. Tuesdays in the Women of Truth group, I'm making it open to women organizations, and I would love you, if you feel it's appropriate, to connect with these organizations and tell them to tell us more about what they do in the group. And we can also provide then some visibility for that work to go global to very specific heart-based leaders and women who are awakening to these issues, because that's what the group's focused on. But also, it's going to help us leverage the young women that are coming in that are really already interested in putting their effort towards this direction, because there are already a few that have joined, and we want to support them. So we want them to know a bit more of these niched organizations that are doing incredible work, not just the general NGOs, but the actual associations like the ones you mentioned that are really instrumental. Ghada, you want to give one comment, and then I'm going to go back to
Yes. First, thank you, Magda, so much. It's so inspiring to listen to your journey and the passion that you have. Let me just talk about this particular goal, because, as you said, it's underpinning most of the goals. This goal, number 16, is really about promoting peaceful, inclusive societies with sustainable development, providing access to justice for all, building effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. It is a shame that we have to hear the stories that are happening still worldwide, globally. So what refugees are going through, what vulnerable communities are going through, what women are going through, the brutality that is still in the street. Or we have to listen to the stories of George Floyd that has been killed by the police in New York, or I'm sorry, in Georgia, or the verbal abuse that happened between the black man that was bird watching in Central Park. My daughter lives right nearby that area. And I have to say, I'm seeing few good signs. One, first, again, it's on us all, engaging with the young people, yes, but all of us putting forcefully. We do not just want to win the war against COVID. We want to have peace. We want to achieve peace. To achieve peace, we need to make fundamental changes. I want to first say we have technology. The internet helped that bird watching black man, I mean, part of getting the story out, part of creating advocacy. This girl that actually tried to get him in trouble and called the police on him got fired from her job. So there is a conscientious employer. There is a shaming, a public shaming that you can start to use by using technology and the internet to try to expose the brutality. So I want to look at technology and the opportunities it's offering us. I want to also say that having a voice is very critical. So all the different initiatives we've heard that allow these vulnerable communities or inequality to be exposed are critical. Education, education, education. I'll keep going back to the reason there is a fight today and a concern about xenophobia or about getting a nationalization and going and deglobalization is because people are ignorant. They believe that today, or there is a level of ignorance. I don't want to be generalizing, obviously, but it's about taking control away from someone. They feel someone is taking away their jobs. We need to educate. There is room for you and me. We can coexist and we can all benefit in this community. And we need to stop the narrative that enforces and reinforces the fear in people and walk away to building more trusting relationships. We will only have peace and a safe environment for all of us to live in and thrive in if there is more trust, more acceptance, and understanding of what's at stake here. And I think really, truly, hopefully, as we all come together and as we invite young people to come on board, as we raise our hands to offer any kind of mentoring, advocacy, that we really are trying to find a new age where we can try to use the technology and try to use the momentum that's upon us to try to achieve a more fair environment, society, and open the door for all the those who have not had an equal chance or opportunity today. Because with them, we can be so much more stronger. We need to change the narrative. We need to, both from leaders, environment, government level, but also the grassroots level. It's not me or you. And I think we need to really become, it's less divisive, more diverse and inclusive. And it will happen. I have hope. The young people on the call, Chiara and everyone else, that the ladies of my generation that had been holding the torch and trying to see a difference and make the world a better place, we will continue our fight, and we will also prepare a new generation, and we'll continue to have better change. So I'm so looking forward to continue to connect with all of you. Thank you for giving me the word, Hellenique.
Hellenique, you mute. Unmute yourself.
I was calling on you. Sorry, I was saying back to you, Magda, and then I was getting, we don't want to just win the war on COVID. We want to build peace for the future. We want to expose injustice using technology. And we also need to be painting the narrative about sharing, looking at divisive thinking, more inclusion. And of course, it threatens the elephant in the room, right? So we've all got to work on how we're going to mobilize together to deal with that reality and still persist and move forward. What about you, Magda? Any response?
No, I think we've got to raise the voices, and I'll just tell you, We've got to raise the voices, we've got to be inclusive, and we've got to ensure the young base gets bigger, because the not the weight they have to, it has to continue. We have to continue this conversation, and we really agree with Ghada that we have to change the narrative. We have to change the narrative and go towards a more inclusive, more comprehensive, more diverse conversation.
You're so cute, Magda, because when you are activistic, I can hear you banging on your computer. It's very
Absolutely.
in the courtroom when she's banging that thing. So we've come to the end, lovely ladies. I'm going to invite you back tomorrow morning if you would like to join us. We're here from 10 to 12:30 Central Eastern Time. Doesn't work with a lot of time zones, and I'm sorry for that. But I do have to teach after that. I'm traveling out. So I wanted to give us a chance to go into that collaboration partnership discussion. If you can't make it for whatever reason and you want to be interacting more with us, don't worry, we are putting you on a list, and we communicate every now and again to this list. There are a list of speakers or contributors. But more than that, I want you to definitely come back to us with a 300-word summary about your contribution. I think we're looking at ways of publishing that and actually getting more visibility here. And we are continuing to look at ways to collect the knowledge and expertise and insight that's developing from our community of discussions. We've been doing this since lockdown happened on various subjects, and we're looking at compiling an ebook on all of these insights. So there is already an article up on LinkedIn with what we've covered today. There are 55 points that are pretty instrumental in redirecting people's thinking towards the future. I would love to share with you more tomorrow, 10 to 12:30 Central Eastern Time. Thank you for all your patience, for all your insight, for your highlights. And if you have any more comments, you can put them on the box. And if you have any more questions, you can put them on the box. Thank you to all of you as well. Thank you, Charlene. I'm grateful to have had you here. And to all the speakers, she's also thanking all of us, saying thank you to all of the speakers. So I'm going to keep the meeting running just a little longer because Justina's going to collect content, even though I have collected it all. And we will hear from Dr. Satnam Devchakar. She's from India, also speaking on this SDG 16, but also is interweaving with different SDGs. She's joining us today. And many more ladies will be coming back tomorrow to actually share in partnership discussion, and many others are also going to be presenting SDG 11 all the way to 17. So thank you so much for your time and attention today. If you have anything you want to copy into this chat box, please do it now, and I will keep it running just a little longer. And then again, thank you so much to everybody.
Thank you so much, Hellenique. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
I'm Magda. So Magda,
Yes?
do you think there is a way to get some of those women into the group?
And let me think it through of how we can do something about this, because I do think we need to, the way forward is to connect as many groups as possible.
Yeah, like maybe there's even, I mean, at the moment there are a few organizations that are represented on the main page, and that's certainly not enough. I mean, she experts also in Cyprus, and Cyprus organizations are, I'm not sure where in terms of connecting with others, but I think the more we can gather, the more there's also a chance to also start getting more young women to know where to go.
Okay, let me think it through and I'll get back to you.